Okay, so today, Dell, well, this was Dell Richardson from Radio Caroline, and of course, the boss of Fury Records. Dell, where are you at the moment?
Yes, I mean, Fury Records. When do you want to start? Do you want me to go back to school days, or do you want to go back to
I
when I
want
started?
you. I want you to just tell me a bit about your background in rock and roll, basically, and how you got into it as a youngster, if you did at all. Of course, you might have been a punk rocker for all I know, and just tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll talk about the madness that was psychobilly and rockabilly. So where
Okay,
where did it
um,
start with you?
let's go back to say 1968 when I was 20 years old, and a mate of mine said to me, "There's a club in Harrow called the 6-5 Special. Why don't you come down?" I mean, I was listening to stuff in the charts then from the 60s, like T Rex and whatever, the Stones, the Who, the Kinks. That's all the sort of stuff I was listening to then. And they invited me down to this club called the 6-5 in Harrow. I walked in the door, and the very first record that was playing was Let There Be Drums by Sandy Nelson. And the whole floor was full of people bopping, and I'd never seen that before. You can imagine. So I thought, well, I like this. Let's have a bit more. And I went to this club every Friday night. They used to have, I don't know, 300 people. It was the only club around playing rock and roll, and um, made loads of friends. Got into the music, started collecting records, and it sort of all started then from when I was 20.
When did the idea of actually setting up your own record label sort of? Because it'll be going forward a bit then.
All right, let's jump forward then. When I was running a club called the Clay Pigeon in Harrow, I used to have groups coming down. My club was on a Sunday night, which was quite unusual, but I could tell you more about that later. But I used to have bands coming down, bands like the Playboys and the Night Shift Trio, and unknown bands really at that time. And after about a few months, I thought to myself, well, these bands, nobody knows these bands. Why don't we sort of make an LP or something? And I spoke to my partner at the time, then Steve Chapman, um, and I said to him, "Look, why don't we do, say, a compilation LP of all the bands that play at the Clay Pigeon?" So we did. We started off with the very first LP called "She's Just Rockin'," and we picked 12 bands. And I remember we got the LP printed at the plant, but the actual record cover, we got a mate to do that in his garage to save money, and then we glued all the covers together, and then slotted them in when the record came out. And of course, people would say to me, "Oh, I understand you got your own label, Dell." And I said, "Yeah, I got 12 bands on it." They didn't realize it was all on one LP. And then as soon as we recouped the money for the first LP, then we did a second one. And of course, then we had 24 bands. And then we did a third one, and so on, you know what I mean? So by the time we did 5 LPs, we had 60 bands. I mean, that sounded impressive, didn't it?
Did the bands have to come to? Did the bands have to come to you with a ready-made recording, or did you have to record them?
Um, in the very beginning, they sent me their recordings at the very beginning. That's before we sort of knew about recording studios and stuff like that. So, yeah, they supplied the tapes, and we got a guy to put them all together, like Alan Wilson does, that type of thing. And that's how it started. And of course, um, our sixth LP release was the Night Shift Trio. That was our very first solo album. And to us, we had a full picture color sleeve. Now, that was something, you know what I mean? We had to, we raised a glass to that. We'd never had a full color sleeve before. And then, of course, our seventh album was the Klingons. And of
We'll
course,
stop it.
that's when.
Yeah, we'll stop a bit. We'll talk about them in a bit. What I
Okay.
want to know is so when you went to that club and they were playing Sandy Nelson, everybody was bopping. So in between that and setting up Fury Records and having your club at the Clay Pigeon, were you like an active? Were you constantly sort of active in the scene in inverted commas all that time in between? Were you like a teddy boy or something like that, or what sort of capacity were you involved in?
Yeah, I was a teddy boy. I had a draped jacket, drain pipe trousers. I remember. I mean, I used to have what we call the usual, uh, um, the chucker boots, and then I remember I treated myself in Harrow to some winkle pickers, and my dad hated them. You know what I mean? How can you walk around like that? You know what I mean? You know what dads are like, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, I was a teddy boy. Um, oh God, so many things happened in those years. You know what I mean? It was incredible. You know, I used to organise coach trips down the coast, and have a police escort. And
So you're into like so you're always like active in organizing stuff and sort of
always, always,
corralling
yeah,
people.
yeah, organising, doing clubs. Um, After the Clay Pigeon, I had a club called the Rainers. And it was when I was doing the Rainers that I got a phone call one day from Tom Ingram. And Tom said, he said, "Oh, I do a radio show in London called Country Music Radio, and I do a rock and roll show." He said, "Well, I'm going to emigrate to America because I've fallen in love with this girl." He said, "Would you like to take over my radio show?" You know what I mean? And he said, "But you'll have to have an interview with the guy, you know." So I went down to London to the CMR, this radio station. It was a satellite radio station. And I walked in the door and I said to this guy, I said, "I know you." And he said, "Yeah, I know you too, Dell." He said, "I've been supplying you with American artists to play at the Clay Pigeon." So as soon as we met, I had a foot in the door. You see what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's where my radio days started. Do you know what I mean?
So when you were back, sorry, I keep taking you back a bit. So when you
You
were
take me
like,
back where you want,
so
Simon.
so when you were sort of knocking around in the '70s with your draped jacket and all the rest of it and organizing stuff, was it like Crazy Cavern and the Riot Rockers, that sort of thing you were sort of all watching?
Yeah, when 1973, we booked Crazy Cavern and the Rhythm Rockers to play at the 6-5 Club in Harrow. And I think it was only a few years they were called Crazy Cavern. Before that, they were called Count Dracula and the Vampires or something, you know. But yeah, Crazy Cavern. And I remember we're all like sort of like in our early 20s watching Crazy Cavern. And of course, then you got all the original Teddy Boys then at the back of the hall, you know what I mean? What's this rockabilly? You know what I mean? What is rockabilly? You know, and they're slowly, you know what I mean, sort of they learnt, you know what I mean? We drummed it into them.
That's interesting because my next question was going to be, so when did you become aware of these young kids turning up in their whatever it was, the polecats, I suppose, in their pink pegs and stuff like that? When did you notice there was a faction breaking away from you old Teddy Boys into what became neo-rockabilly and then psychobilly? When did you sort of start
No.
seeing that creep in?
In the late 70s and early 80s, I ran a club in Uxbridge called the Unit One. And we had a small recording studio in the back of the club, and we had a label called Tiger Records, Tyger, Tiger Records. And I used to run this youth club, and we started booking bands like Matchbox, Wild Wind, just trying to think who used to come down there. Little Tony and the Tennessee Rebels, all these sort of bands. And of course, then these guys were walking in with flat top haircuts and a completely different style to the Teddy Boys, of course. You know what I mean? And of course, they're all coming in with Confederate flags and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? That's how it sort of started in my club, you know. And I was booking all these sort of bands. I mean, if you think of, say, the Blue Cats, with Carlo and Steph and all those sort of guys, they all started down at my place. The Stargazers, right? Stargazers. When they came to my club, they were called the Rhythm Cats. That's how they started, and then changed their name to the Stargazers, and then went on to be who they are now. So lots of memories from those days of bands starting with me.
So for those of us that weren't there, so the because I ain't lucky enough to interview Cavan, and he told me that they used to mix up their originals with the obscure rockabilly that he used to get that the Teddy Boys didn't know, and that's the only reason they would even listen to original songs because they weren't quite sure if they were originals or if they were Cavan's own ones. So that the rockabilly was sort of absorbed into the Teddy Boy scene, but then it split out with these young guys doing their own thing. Is that basically how it happened?
Yeah, yeah, exactly like that. And of course, with Cavan himself, writing his own material, I mean, to me, that was fantastic, to write a song, called Teddy Boy Boogie and have 100 people strolling on the floor, you know what I mean? I mean, yes, Cavan were doing things, rockabilly things like Mama's Little Baby and all American sort of like rockabilly classics. But when Cavan actually sat down and wrote his own songs, to me, that was the start of something new.
Yeah. So now that when the Polecats and their stuff sort of did you like this new, the way these new upstarts were doing it? Were you one of the ones that sort of embraced it, or were you one of? Did you suddenly migrate to the back of the floor with the other Teddy Boys with your arms folded and sort of
No,
scowl?
I'm afraid I loved it. As soon as I heard Rockabilly Guy by the Polecats, I thought, wow, this is great. Anything that makes you tap your feet is me. You know what I mean? I just love that sort of music. Even early Meteors and stuff like that, I liked. That they brought out a song called Voodoo Rhythm, and I remember buying that on an EP. And as you just said, there were the older Teds, older than me, that really didn't like that sort of that music, and there was a clash. But no, I really promoted it.
And were you sort of involved with Roy Williams back then, sort of friendly with him?
Yes, yeah. In fact, Roy and I, when he was running Nervous Records and I was running Fury Records, we actually shared an office in Park Royal in London, and for many many years, that was it was the Nervous and Fury empire sort of thing. And had bands coming in, bringing their demos and whatever, or we would advertise, say, in the States, for bands to send their rock and roll tapes. And when we get it, of course, it was nothing like what we wanted. You know what I mean? You'd have some heavy metal outfit saying, "Well, we're rock and roll," and of course, then we'd reply and say, "Well, where's the wild slapping bass, man?"
So we go back. So we're flip flopping around. So we've gone back to you've got the club at the Clay Pigeon. You've started up your own record label. You've had 5 compilations out, and then was it 1988?
I would say
You've put out the Klingons.
1980. I think it was 87. We did the Night Shift Trio. You'll have to excuse me because I'm old now and I can't always remember. But yeah, we did the Klingons. Now that was interesting because someone said to me, "You're a record label, Dell. You need to do different stuff." You know what I mean? What about a psychobilly band? So I thought, well, we used to go down to the Clubfoot in Hammersmith. I used to go with Roy and see bands like Restless and the Guana Bats and things like that. But I wanted somebody new. So somebody said, "Look, there's a club in Hendon called the LMS, and they do a psychobilly night once a week. And the guy that runs it is a guy called Tony Dangerfield, who was once a member of Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages. So he was a savage. So he only lived down the road. So he decided to start this club. And of course, we went in there, and we saw this band of Klingons with huge, great hair, and they were absolutely crazy, insane, and the crowd loved them. They just loved them, and it was like 100 mile an hour, you can imagine. And I said to them one day, "Why don't we do an album?" And that's how that came about. Crazy.
Were you hands on with the recording process, or was that another that they just delivered?
I was hands on, and we did actually go to the studio. And when the engineer was there, I remember it. I think it was a company called Triple X Studios, and we walked in the studios. And the Klingons arrived with crates and crates of beer. You know what I mean? And I remember the engineer saying to me, "Who are these people?" He'd never seen anything like it. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was crazy, crazy.
And that sort of kick. Would you say that kicked the label into a different sort of kicked Fury Records into a different sort of league? Then, with after
Yeah,
going for the
most yeah, most definitely, yeah. And of course with Roy also releasing albums at that time, like the Ricochets and bands like that, we sort of rubbed off on each other. You know what I mean? Me and Roy, and of course, it worked great. The two of us, it really was good.
Because when Fury came into Psychobilly, I mean, the club foot was pretty much on about to end, wasn't it? Which a lot of people
Yeah,
see as the beginning of the end in the UK, at least for the sort of Psychobilly scene. But you kept it going with the Demented Our Go was another one. So you were quite a glutton for punishment, really, weren't you?
I like the way you put it. Yeah, and when you think that we did bands like the Klingons and Demented Argo and Mad Sin, and yet I did 4 CDs by the Rapiers, and people would say to me, Dell, I can't believe that you did Psychobilly, and yet you got these bands like the Rapiers and Ray Kondo and all and I said, yeah, but you've got to understand, I'm a record label. We do everything, I wanted to branch out and not just do one particular thing, and there was a market for Psychobilly music at that time.
But I mean, were you sort of the opinion that it was all the same sort of music, really?
How,
That,
how,
well,
how can you say it's the same sort of music when I was so diverse with bands like the Rapiers and Ray Kondo and whatever,
no. What I mean is when people sort of get sniffy saying, "Oh, you got the Rapiers and then you've got the Klingons." I got a room full of music that ranges from Hank Williams to some of your, Demented Argo and the Klingons, and to me, it's all just a wide variation of the same theme, really. I mean, was that sort of thing that was going through your head, or was it, did you have to sort of hold your nose a bit sometimes, depending on what it was?
No, 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 not at all. Because if you let's just take the Klingons, right, which was 100 mile an hour, what I call pure psychobilly. You can get like neo-rockabilly that's slightly psychobilly, or you can get like what I call a thrash psychobilly. But you take the Klingons, right? I remember one of my big Rumble weekends, the Klingons were playing, and down in the audience there were 3 Japanese girls. They were probably teenagers, right? They flew from Japan to come to the big Rumble. Now, none of them could speak English, okay? But all of them sang, they knew the words to the Klingon songs. And they were, crazy songs like Pick, Pick, Yum, Yum, and all these things. And they were singing them as the Klingons were playing. That was the attraction. And I thought, well, if Japanese people will travel halfway across the world to see the Klingons, then there must be something right that I'm doing,
Absolutely right, yeah. And so, Demented I Go, you got any Demented I Go stories?
Demented I'll go. Well, we all know the sort of reputation of Mark. You know what I mean? But a crazy band. I can remember when they went to the south of France one day, and I remember Mark Phillips got off the train halfway down, probably somewhere like Lyon, and when he came back to the train had gone. You know what I mean? I think he went to the loo or something. And anyway, I think the tour had to be sort of cancelled because Ant from Demented, when they got there, of course, they got to the south of France to these gigs, and of course they had Mark's passport and everything like that. You know what I mean? In bags, and of course, but no Mark Phillips. Anyway, they came back to the UK, and about 3 weeks later, me and Roy were in the studio in Park Royal. Telephone rings. Oh, a British embassy here in Paris. Do you know somebody called Mark Phillips? And I said yes. And they said, oh, is there any way that you could get him back home? You know what I mean? So we paid for a flight to have him flown back to the UK. I don't think he ever got off a train again, you know.
And the other band you mentioned were the big characters, and it was Mad Sin.
Yeah, Mad Sin again, from Germany, and we did an album called Amphigori. And it's funny, with a lot of the CDs that we put out in those days, some of those are still available today. I'm still selling them today, 35 years on. It's crazy, isn't it? Unbelievable.
And one of the other things, you say you're a big organizer, and you did used to like a challenge, the big rumbles. Now, I think I went to all of them that's from the Great Yarmouth Vauxhall holiday. So I missed the first one or two, maybe. So
Yeah,
tell
well,
us about the big rumble, where that came about.
yeah, the Big Rumble. There was a bootleg album that came out with rockabilly songs on, and there was this guy in a leather jacket, which I now use as my logo, and uh, the actual album was called The Big Rumble, and it was like more rockabilly stuff. And I thought, what a great name for a psychobilly weekend! Call it The Big Rumble. And for the very first, I think one or two, I did with Tom Ingram, and we actually did them up at the old Hemsby site, and then Tom moved on, and of course, then I thought to myself, well, I'll have a go at this, you know what I mean? And then we moved to the Vauxhall Holiday Park in Great Yarmouth, and that's where we started doing those big rumble weekends. So, was it Vauxhall that you went to?
First one was Vauxhall, yeah. The first one at Vauxhall was the first one I went to, I think. Caught the bus from Victoria that used to run up to there. And I got the train up from Devon. Went on my own actually the first time, yeah.
I remember I was on the desk with Karen because we used to get um, little photographs taken, and you had your own card with your photo on. And then, of course, I don't know if you remember when we put out those big Rumble LPs, we put everyone's photos on the back, which is fantastic. You know what I mean? And even the Vauxhall Holiday Park management, right? We put their faces with the psychobilly ones, but added psychobilly haircuts to them. You know what I mean? That was so funny. That they did have a laugh about that.
Now you must
But I
have a few
remember,
stories.
I remember on the first one, this Japanese guy, he walks up right to book in, and what he had done was on his eyelids, he'd if he closed his eyes, he'd actually painted eyes on his eyelids. So when his eyes were closed, he was still looking at you. You know what I mean? It was the weirdest thing, and Karen was amazed. I think the sort of people that were turning up. You know what I mean? But I do remember one of the, I can't remember which rumble it was, but me and Karen, we came out of the hall, must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, We came out, it's freezing cold, and there was this guy laying on the floor right outside, and had too much to drink. So anyway, next morning we have our breakfast. We come up to the hall. He's still laying there, but he's completely covered in frost, and we thought he was dead. You know what I mean? So Karen reached down and sort of pushed him, and then she said, "Caw, you can smell the drink on his breath, you know." And then he just woke up, and he said, "Oh, what time is it?" You know what I mean? He'd been there all night, nearly frozen, you know. And he got up and walked off. Unbelievable. A German guy it was. Unbelievable.
It used to be sort of Halloween weekendish, didn't it? That sort of time of
Oh,
year.
yeah, yeah. And you know, I mean, you know, I was running those weekends, and I was trying to even make the big rumbles diverse. Somebody said to me, "Look, you're getting a lot of scooter guys coming down now, you know, and they like bands like the Long Tall Texans and bands like that because they've got that sort of almost like a reggae type sort of beat to them. You know what I mean? Why don't you get some, you know, get the specials or something like that?" So I booked a band called the Selector. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah, a two-tone band, you know what I mean? And of course, a few people said to me, "Oh, not sure, Dell, not sure," you know. But I did. I put them on, and they went down a storm because it was something different, you know what I mean, on that weekend. So I like all types, you know.
Did you used to? I remember you being around because I probably bored you to death a few times after a few beers myself. But did you used to be sort of watching a lot of the bands, or were you too busy organising stuff? And how
I
easy
probably
was it to organise? I mean, there's like corralling cats, surely the Psychobillies.
God, horrendous. I, to this day, I don't know how we did it, but we did, you know. But it was fun. It was fun, but very very hard work, you know. And of course, you know that with those holiday camps, you have to put down a deposit on the actual caravans they were staying in. And of course, because Vauxhall would say to me after the first rumble, "Oh, well, if you do another one, Dell, you're going to have to put down some extra money for damage." You know what I mean? These people, they said, "They're not like ordinary holiday makers, are they?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Yeah, because we went to one of the caravans, and all the doors were hanging off, and there was water squirting out from behind the taps or something." They said, "We don't know what they got up to." I said, "Well, it was probably an all-night party, and,
You were
and
quite
and God knows what they were having in there."
you were quite innovative, weren't you? Because you had like in closed circuit TV with Captain Drugbuster hosting and stuff like
Oh,
that.
Hemsby TV. We of course, all the caravans had their own TV sets, and of course, for Hemsby TV, we used to get Captain Drugbuster or some of the other guys going around the caravans and just filming. And somebody were like, they'd bang on the door of the caravan or the chalet, and of course somebody would like open the door. They'd just like woken up, and then they'd just barge in. It didn't matter what state of dress they were in, and then just start filming. You know what I mean? And then replay it to the whole camp on Hemsby TV. Yeah, no,
Well,
I do remember some bands. I mean, I won't mention. I can say it was an American guy, who was in the wrong caravan with a different young lady friend. Let's put it like that.
I do remember being in the Flintstones caravan one year, and we came out and somebody written "super drug" on the side.
Uh, I know. Well, you know what Chuck was like, a great guy. I don't know. Does Chuck still live in Germany? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Does
he
he?
does. Yeah, I spoke to him not long ago. He's still in Berlin yet.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
went
he's
to
not
visit him.
performing anymore, but he's still there.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, yeah. I went to visit him in Germany, because I was out there also seeing a band called Hot Boogie Chillin'. and of course that's another great band, that everybody loves. You know what I mean? Well, when I say everybody loves, I remember I booked them into Hemsby, and the organizer there said, um, "Oh, I'm not keen on this band." I said, "Look, there's 2,000 people in that hall going nuts about them." You know what I mean? But you either, it's like Marmite. You either love them or hate them.
When the Rumble came to an end, was it? Did it had it sort of just lived its life basically? Is that
It
why you
did
sort of?
really. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did 11 big rumbles altogether. And yeah, as you said, it sort of just started to dwindle off then, you know what I mean? And then I thought to myself, well, um, why don't I switch then and do perhaps another Teddy Boy weekend or something like that, you know what I mean? Because the psychobilly was drifting off, and of course the more rockabilly or Teddy Boy stuff was still quite popular.
Yeah. So that up to nowadays, Fury still releasing material.
Yeah, I do sing. I do it for a bit of fun now. I mean, um, I just like my latest 45 by Mario Bradley, called "She's Got Me Hypnotized," and people say to me, "Well, it's on the CD. Why have you put it out?" And I say, "Well." And this is actually crazy, and I've actually put this into a little letter to you, Simon, for review with this latest one. I had a company in Camden Town called WRD Music, and the guy phoned me up and he said, "You're Mario Bradley. She's got me hypnotized. It's going down a storm in Latin American and ballroom clubs." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. All the ballroom people love it as a ballroom jive. You know what I mean? You know, Stuff just amazes me all the time. You know what I mean? I just can't wait to sort of tell Mario Bradley that he's a big hit in a ballroom club."
Been googling all the big names in ballroom now to see if you can
That's right.
pitch it
Well,
pitch it properly.
I want to see Mario Bradley played on Strictly Come Dancing. Yeah,
Oh dear.
they didn't pick a Klingons track.
There's still time, Dell, for any of that. So there's still time. Anyways, it's been really, really good fun talking to you. Really enjoyed it. And thanks very much for your time. Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet.
and that there's about 8 hours I could tell you about.
Well, you maybe can finish with one particularly memorable psychobilly related incident. Do you think you can pull one out of the bag?
um, I think I was saying to you about this particular event that you missed. Um, Myself and Roy Williams, this is before the big rumbles. We said, why don't we put on a psychobilly weekend at Santa Pod Raceway? And we got Tom Ingram involved in this as well. And what we did was we got an Arctic truck, and on the trailer made it into a stage. I got the sound guy that did the clay pigeon bands for me, got him down there. And then I said to Roy, let's make it something really, really fantastic. We'll book as many bands as we can to play on the Saturday and Sunday, even if it means saying to a smaller band, it's going to be a massive weekend. Come down, you can camp there, we'll feed you, we'll give you traveling expenses, whatever. And so that's what happened. 28 bands we had on a Saturday and Sunday. And of course, um, it was a massive thunderstorm, and people were saying, "Oh, Dell, great, the lightning, the thunder. You couldn't have planned it better." I said, "Yeah, we ordered all that." Yeah, that was the 22nd of July, 1989, and that was when you were just a nipper.
Just a nipper, yeah. Well, Dale,
I think
like I said, it's been brilliant, man. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, if only we could go back to 1989 again, eh? But plenty of life in us all
yeah,
yet.
yeah. Maybe the next time I'll interview you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Not for many people, I'd expect. Anyway, Dale, that's really good. I really appreciate it. Dell Richardson of Fury Records, still on Radio Caroline with your show.
Well, Radio Caroline Flashback.
Okay, so how can people
Okay.
find it if they will listen to you?
Yeah, if they Google Caroline Flashback, I'm on a Friday night between 6 and 8 p.m.
And you
and
play
I
the
do a
Klingons?
different. Sorry.
Do you play the Klingons?
Well, I will if you come down.
Excellent.
Maybe I could interview you one day on Caroline Flashback.
I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be an honor. Yeah, thanks very much.
And you could pick out some of your favourite songs.
I would. No, I'd love to do that. Yeah, live on air. Look, I've been invited. Thanks very
Yeah,
much.
maybe there's one on horse racing.
Well, I probably know more about music, but there you go. I can mention betting, but I think more about music. That's much more interesting. Excellent. I look forward to that then, Dale, and we'll give that a good push when it comes out. So,
All right,
Richardson,
nice to chat.
you too. Thank you.
Bye, mate.
Cheers. Hello everyone, just a quick one. If you have enjoyed these videos and are enjoying these videos, can you please like and subscribe to my channel? Thanks very much.